of the media, welcome to the PPP Weekly Press Conference. With me here is our General Secretary. He'll be reading two statements, after which we'll be taking questions. Yes?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I read the first statement as follows. The PNC APNU continues its vulgar attacks on the sugar industry and the sugar workers, thus putting the country's economy at risk and the livelihood of sugar workers at stake. The PPP reaffirms its commitment and full support to the industry and its workforce. At the announcement of the new board of directors, Carl Greenidge lambasted the composition of the board. He attacked the credentials of the members and made it clear that, quote, the government should harbor no illusions about the likelihood of parliamentary support for the future request for funds for GECOM, end of quote. By his own statement, Greenidge has usurped the authority of the entire parliament by sending a clear signal that he will obstruct support for the sugar industry and the sugar workers. We are not surprised by this statement because in the last several debates in Parliament, he opposed the appropriation of funds for the industry. In fact, it appears that he is determined to take bread out of the mouths of sugar workers who have made so many sacrifices for this country. Mr. Greenidge went as far as to advance a position similar to that of former PNC APNU parliamentarian Tony Vera, to the effect that the sugar industry must abandon its sugar field in favor of tilapia farming, even though such a venture was previously tried and failed under the PNC dictatorship. The PNC APNU is bent on destroying the lives of sugar workers. The political ambitions of the PNC APNU are driving their decisions to do all they can to impede the recent progress in the industry. Success will hamper their political aspirations. The PPP wants to make it very clear, as it did in the past, that it will continue to give full support to the industry because we understand the challenges and the need to create the environment for a better life for all those who depend on the industry. But Mr. Greenidge's vindictiveness will not only destroy the lives of sugar workers, it will also damage the economic activities of the entire country, and specifically the thriving businesses around the sugar estates and the businesses that depend on the sugar industry to sustain the operations and the workers. Mr. Greenidge's statements with respect to sugar is astounding, if not puzzling, to say the least. It is to be recalled that during his tenure at the ACP Secretariat in Brussels and the Netherlands, Sir Greenidge, like other members of the ACP, were brought fully up to speed with the challenges facing the sugar industries in ACP countries. He was a front row witness to the heated and prolonged debates about the future of the industry in the ACP countries with the European Union commissioners. He witnessed the battles to save the preferential market access to European Union markets, as well as the complex negotiations at the World Trade Organization. But now he has thrown all of this behind him, and like the typical political opportunist, has abandoned all that the ACP countries stood and fought for in exchange for cheap politicking and expediency. Mr. Greenidge must stop the reckless behavior. so commonplace now in his party, and do what is best for all of Guyana and not just the very narrow interests of the PNC APNU. The next statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party calls once again on GECOM to ensure a credible list of electors is produced at the end of this current extended period of claims and objections. The PPP has always advocated in favor of a list that will not disenfranchise any eligible Guyanese. Moreover, had it not been for the many struggles over the years, the return to democracy would have continued to be a figment of our imagination. The sixth cycle of continuous registration and the claims and objections being no exception, the party, through its rigorous field work, has uncovered a number of discrepancies with the preliminary list of electors. The PPP calls on GECOM to take corrective actions now and refrain from issuing ambiguous statements in an effort to cover for a list that is highly questionable. Our request is straightforward and simple. All we would like to have are elections that are free, fair, and transparent. Some of our findings and demands highlighted in early statements and letters to GECOM are as follows. 1. GECOM owes the nation a proper explanation for the massive increase of almost 80,000 registrants when previously the increase was recorded at 11,000 annually. Our country will now have a list of over 550,000 electors whenever elections are called. 2. Party activists working in Georgetown found an individual with a pre-prepared list at an address which has 18 electors on the PLE. GECOM has refused to conduct a physical verification of these persons. 3. GECOM must explain how persons living at the same address in Georgetown are, however, placed on different divisional lists. 3. At Prospect on the east bank of the Demerara, PPP field workers visited an address to verify information that 10 persons whose address on the PLE reflected that they were all living at the same address. To our surprise, at the address they found an empty lot with overgrown bushes, unoccupied for the past 8 to 10 years. This is reminiscent of the documentary The Trail of the Vanishing Voter. 4. One of our major concerns remained the ineffectiveness of GECOM's mobile units. Due to the poor public relations in notifying residents well in advance and the inconvenient days and times for residents. Generally, most workers get home after 5 in the afternoon on weekdays. Yet GECOM is conducting coastland mobile exercises without due regard to these realities. Thus far, the party has uncovered approximately 2,958 dead persons on the PLE. This was uncovered during our fieldwork. The PPP has noted with concern too the recent statements made by the opposition leader with regards to the coalition's position on the massive increase of electors on the PLE. The opposition seems to be confident that the list is not padded and has publicly expressed confidence in GECOM. This is the same position that this is the same opposition that did not support our request to extend the claims and objections period by 7 days. The results are there for the nation to see with regards to the amount of transactions done during this extended period. The PPP calls on GECOM to make this public. The PPP hopes that its worst fears will not be confirmed. Again, we call on all Guyanese and major stakeholders to support our call for a list free of discrepancies, thus paving the way for free, fair, and transparent elections in our country. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. I'll be open for questioning.
Sir, do you believe that this list as you described is highly questionable? Can be cleaned up in time for an election?
Well, I believe that if the requirements that we ask to be put in place are fulfilled, yes, it could be done. And obviously, we come back to the question of the IT department at GECOM that compiles all the data. We still know that there are some vacancies, there are critical vacancies that needs to be filled, and GECOM needs to take in good faith all that the PPP has submitted to them in writing in respect of these discrepancies.
What are your worst fears? We talk about worst fears.
The worst fears are that the list is unacceptable because it is padded with underage persons, with so many dead people, and that the list will eventually be rejected. That is our worst fear. If the list is rejected, it would mean that probably a new exercise of continuous registration and claims and objections may have to be done. This time with GECOM and party scrutineers to ensure that the lists are clean and acceptable enough, at least to us. We can only speak for the PPP. Because as I said, you know, all we want is a clean and credible list. We're not asking for anything else. We just want to make sure that the list is, and by the way, I notice again in this Tabloid News editorial, they talk about mutterings and, you know, as though we are calling for something that is unfair. It seems to me that in these days, whenever you call for something that is free and fair, you're deemed to be, you know, calling for something that you ought not to be calling for. So it's amazing how things have turned around in this country. So that if the PPP calls for free and fair elections, the PPP is seen as the electoral orb, so to speak, calling for something that is in the best interest of the country. And I can't believe, after having spent so many years fighting for free and fair elections, that a call for free and fair elections, a call for a clean voters list, is seen as an attack on the process rather than the party representing an interest, which we have a legitimate right to do. We have a legitimate right to ensure that the list is acceptable to us. If other parties find it is acceptable to them, well then that's okay with them, not with us. So I have a difficulty with how it is as though we ask for something that is unfair. It is as though we are asking for something that is unjust. And it is as though we shouldn't be even questioning GECOM or questioning the list. This is how this thing is being put over in the editorials of Tabloid News and some other stakeholders. You know, it appears as though they must put a ring around our noses and be led into believing something that we don't want to accept.
Mr. Roy, if you could permit me a question.
Yeah.
You talk about a need for a continuous registration with the involvement of party scrutineers. How do you foresee this affecting the date for any election, given what we have in Parliament now with no confidence motion? Let us assume that it is debated and passed in the first few days of October, sorry, and you have 90 days according to the Constitution. How do you foresee your idea of the need for continuous registration impacting that deadline?
Well, put it this way. There are a host of implications, I do agree, which we will have to look at if that situation arises. But I would say when we come to that bridge, we will cross it. But I do recall, as you probably would, Mr. Chabal, I think it was in 1991 when Mr. Rudy Collins was the commissioner of GECOM. And I was also a member of the commission. We went to the office of the president to inform Mr. Hoyt that GECOM was not ready. you know. I don't know if you would recall that. And Mr. Hart had to make certain decisions. I'm not saying that we will go back there. All that I'm saying is what you have raised there has certain implications. And obviously, when we reach that bridge, we'll have to cross it.
Let me get Stabrook News first, and then
Yeah.
Court, and
Thank
then.
you. Going back to the list, you had said it was 2,958 dead persons, correct?
Approximately.
Approximately. The GRO is responsible for reporting the deaths to the commission, and that falls under the purview of the Ministry of Home Affairs. What I want to know is how can you say that there are these people that you found these dead persons on the list? However, the GRO, under the procedures, they have to report those deaths to GECOM for them to be taken off, or for them to be like scratched off essentially.
You know, I read that editorial and I'm amazed. I'm amazed at the mediocrity of whoever wrote that editorial. It's amazing. People who write editorials ought to be educated on basic methodologies that are used in certain institutions of the country. Let me make a very, very simple example. And it's foolish for them to speak about what they're talking about, because I suspect they know very well what is the procedure. If Pushpa's mother passes away, Pushpa has to register the death. Not the GRO. Pushpa has to register the death. She has to also get certain medical documents from the Ministry of Health. And then she has to go to the GRO and get what is called a death certificate. Only when that is done by the relatives of the individual, then the GRO would take action. Otherwise to that, if Mr. Chung or whoever it is may have passed away and his relatives didn't find it necessary to register the death and to get a death certificate issued, well, I don't know how much we could answer more than that.
So then, but then
Everybody
you're
knows
holding
Mr. Chung.
GECOM accountable.
That is the point. Everybody knows Mr. Chung, but you still have to do certain procedures. GRO will never issue a death certificate unless people take action.
And then their name can never be struck from the list if the GRO does not go to GECOM.
My friend, GRO cannot submit anything to GECOM unless that name is struck from the list based on a death certificate being issued.
So then how do you
Exactly.
take off the names of the dead persons?
Well, you have a claims and objections period. You just turn up with a document. GECOM, I think, has announced how you will do it. If you know your neighbor has died, that passed away, you walk to GECOM office and you say you would like to object that this person passed away 10 years ago, and then GECOM will tell you, you better walk with evidence to show that the person has died, because unless you walk with that, they're not going to take it off the list.
That's
Sir,
the point.
Well, you should follow that up.
But that's
It has nothing to do. GRO is not authorized to willy-nilly, capriciously strike names off of a list.
and neither can GECOM. So if you're holding GECOM accountable for these
My friend, you're not
3,000
listening
names-
to me.
I am listening to you. I
Well,
know
I'm
you're
saying
not
to you,
listening
a
me.
death certificate has to be issued. In the same way a birth certificate is issued and is pursued by the parents of a newborn child, they must register the birth and have a birth certificate in their hand. Then the birth will be registered at the GRO.
So then you're
When a
calling on
person,
individuals
could I
that-
finish, please? If you want to believe this type of news, I don't have a problem with that. But I'm telling you how it is done.
So your calls for the removal of the names of dead persons is legitimate in light of what you're saying?
Excuse me?
Is your call for the removal of the names of dead persons legitimate in light of the process that you are
Listen to me.
outlining?
We as a political party, we are doing our work. We can't do the GRO work. We can't do GECOM's work. We have discovered thousands of dead people on the list. We have sent that information to GECOM. GECOM must sort it out with the GRO.
What evidence did you send that information with, sir?
As much information as we can get.
2,958.
As much information as
No,
we
an
can get.
example, give us an example of some of the types of evidence.
Man, how y'all asking questions at the press conference? Is that the way you ask questions at a press conference?
All right, let's move on.
I thought
Come.
you indicate who wishes to ask a question.
Let's move on.
He's asking a question, you're shooting from the other end. What kind of press conference
right.
is this?
I
First,
was trying to figure out.
Mr. Mosley asks a question, then somebody else intervenes. I thought there ought to be some order. I'm sure you don't conduct yourself at a press conference like this at OP.
Mr. Rickard, you spoke about rejecting the list. Could you explain the process?
No, I didn't speak about rejecting the list.
Possibility of rejecting.
I said that I hope that our worst fears are not confirmed. And I also followed up by saying that by a question that was asked, that it would possibly be that as a result of GECOM's inability to clean up all its lists, it might have to go to another cycle of continuous registration and another claims and objection period. I don't know. I'm just talking off the top of my head,
But
so
you
to
can
speak.
continue to use the standard current list. Could you say if there's any move by the party or if there's any consideration to challenge the list in court if that's an
All of that can play out, my friend. All of that. At the end of the day, I don't see GECOM holding to a list of the PPP, which is a major political party in this country, objecting to it. I don't see that. It has never happened in the history of this country since I was around. I don't know, but before in colonial days. But I know now any major stakeholder said they're not accepting the list. GECOM gotta come clean. Remember I said, GECOM don't contest elections, we do. And if we're not satisfied with the list, we will make our voices and our demands heard. We have any elections to win. We don't have any elections to lose.
all right,
Yes,
pardon.
on the question of the no confidence motion, 2 weeks ago you said that the party's executives will be meeting to discuss the no confidence motion. Did that happen?
We are in the process of discussing it. We are in the process of discussing it. The party is currently discussing the matter. We haven't reached any conclusions on it as yet. Pretty early, I said.
Mr. Rowe,
On the last question, on the Mr. Ramprant this week wrote about the cabinet reverting to a reversal to the cabinet system of government. Did you see that?
If I did what?
Did you see Mr. Ramprant's article on reverting to a cabinet system of government?
I read it halfway and I stopped reading. I read it, that's my preference. I read it halfway and I stopped reading it. I didn't continue reading it. It sounds to me like old hat. It sounds to me like old hat. He'd been touting that views many, many moons ago. But he's come back to it now, and Stafford News was found it necessary to give it front page coverage, so we can see the coincidence of views on it.
Yeah,
yeah, Mr. Rowe,
let's get harder, right? Ask question. Push for you. Got your chance again. Mosley now.
Mr. Rowe, going back to the number of dead persons that the party would have found on the list. What I'm trying to get from you, sir, are you outline the process in objecting to dead persons on the list? What I'm trying to find out is that in so doing, did the PPP provide evidence to show that these people are actually dead, or they may have moved, or how did the party come up? Because this is a large number, how did the party come up?
Okay,
with
listen to me.
this figure?
You know, when we speak sometimes, I'm not saying you, but when we say things and it is not given adequate coverage in the media, then it means that people are being denied our position. But we have said time and time again that thousands of our people are out there walking the streets, the villages, the rivers, the creeks, and so on. We have a house-to-house campaign going on to check on the voters list, the PLE that is. We did it in respect to the continuous cycle of registration. We did it in respect to the National Register of Registrants, and we're doing it again now. When we visit every house or every location, wherever we might go, Ireland is a small country, everybody knows everybody. So if we find a list, if we check the list and we find that this house is supposed to have X or Y person, and we find nobody, then we'd ask people in the neighborhood, we'd ask people who are living here, people say, oh, that person died so many years ago, we make a note of that, okay? And based on the information collected from the community. I mean, after all, when you go to a murder scene, or when you go, you do your investigation at the scene of accident, you write things and people tend to believe it. So what is wrong when we send our people out and they visit the field and they find things and they write it up and they report it, we send it to GECOM? What's wrong with that? What, your reporting is more credible than our reporting? We're on the ground. And we're picking up this information from people who live in the neighborhood, people who've been around for all the years, and who knows who's moved out, who's gone away, and all these different things. And we submit as much information we can on the person or persons to GECOM. And all we asking for is for GECOM to do a verification. We give the information, okay, here is what we have found out. Could you please go and check it out? And verify it against your internal, you know, whatever data you might have internally. That's all we're asking them to do. But if they find that that's not their job, well, then we will continue to fight over that.
Do you have a breakdown of where, like, the majority of these dead persons that you say from the list, where they may have been located? Is
Yeah,
there specific-
Mr. Mosley. Mr. Mosley. You know, I think you have to give us the benefit of the doubt in this sense, that as the General Secretary of this party, I'm not going to sit in front of all of you and give out information that is not credible. If I say, as the General Secretary of the party, that we have written to GECOM and we've submitted as much information as we can to these people, I'm speaking on behalf of the PPP.
Well, I'm not doubting that, sir.
So what are you
What I'm
questioning?
trying to
Whether
get
we've
from
given
you-
them all the information?
No, is that you say you have 2,958
Correct.
persons, right?
That's correct.
Voting is divided into districts.
Yes.
In Region 1, how many people there in Region 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10?
That's what you want to
That's
know?
what I want to know.
All right, here. Regions 1, 7, 8, and 9, 450.
It's still among.
Regions 3, 232. Regions 2, 345. Region 5, 430. Region 6, 925. Region 11,
10.
288. Region 10, 288. Region 4, 288.
And it's strange that the largest voting block, District 4, Region 4, has the
Are we still
lowest
in
number.
this?
But Chief, information reports are still coming in.
Okay.
This is as of today.
Just take a clarification, you know.
No, this is as of today. This is not el punto final.
Okay. There might be more.
This is not el punto final.
Okay.
That's what I said approximately.
Okay.
So we're still tabulating, and as we do the tabulation, we will link that to the information and send it to GECOM. So we're doing our part. In a sense, we're helping GECOM. We're not obstructing GECOM. We are helping GECOM by providing. This is what you've given up the list. That is what GECOM has done. GECOM has given us the list. Go check. As the song says, go find it on the mountain. So we have gone out. This is what we have found. We send it to GECOM. GECOM must do their verification. That's all we're asking for.
Yeah, push
Go
forward.
tell it.
Go tell it on the mountain here. Thank you for the
One
correction.
more follow-up from that then. Is then GECOM's verification not dependent on information coming from the GRO?
You going back to that thing again?
Because
Yes.
is maintaining that.
You are not hearing me.
I am hearing you.
It is dependent in the sense that if the death is not registered by the person's relative or friend of that dead person, the GRA will not act.
GRO.
The GRO. I'm thinking about GRA and the other incident.
All right, we got Dennis, and then
The GRO will not act.
Oh, I understand that. I understand
all right,
exactly what
push
you're saying.
Dennis.
So Rory, it has already been said in some circles of the opposition that the PEP is raising these objections to the list because it feels that it has a very slim chance of winning the next election. So therefore you're already setting the stage to basically explain your defeat or poor performance in the next election.
Oh, really? You know, I once saw a movie by Denzel with Denzel Douglas where he said King Kong ain't got shit on me.
Denzel Washington.
Denzel Washington. So, you know, I'll tell you this, that the opposite to the contrary. Listen, we believe in an orderly, peaceful, and transparent election. We have fought tooth and nail for that. We've gone to prison for that. Many of us have been killed for that. That's what we want. But it seems as though on the opposite side, and think about this, it may very well not be in their interest to have an orderly, peaceful, and transparent elections, but to have one that is characterized by confusion and disorderliness. Because with confusion and disorderliness, what comes with that? Questioning the results. Questioning the results. And so we want to start out from now. We want to start it from now to ensure that the process is clean, orderly, and transparent. We can't go around here. And maybe those guys on the opposite side, in Upper Brick Dam, are hoping that, or Upper Hatfield Street, sorry, Upper Hatfield Street, are the ones who are, you know, hoping and praying that confusion will reign. And as Gord Mosley and many others know, when confusion reigns, mischief is afoot.
Me, you know, I'm from London.
Quite sure.
I've been around for 13 years. Mr. Roy, the thing, I just want to make sure that I got you correctly with this 2,958 number. You said that you sent the information that you got on the ground to GECOM, but this is just based on what people told you, no other evidence.
My friend.
No, I just want to make sure that that's, because I don't
No.
want to
When you say no other evidence, what do you mean? Like what so?
like any other possible evidence.
No, like what?
I'm not, death certificate, any, I don't know, picture of someone in the coffin. I don't know. But I just want to know if sometimes PNP is a very crafty party, so maybe you'll be able to get other evidence. But I just want to know if it's just here, what the people told you.
Miss Rockcliffe.
So
Miss
just
Rockcliffe.
confirm, please.
But in the same way you want to confirm, I want to conform too. Right? Our people, when they're going around checking house to house, would be hard pressed to have a death certificate in their hands and to have a photograph of some dead person lying in a coffin. You know, so that kind of evidence would be asking a little too much.
Okay, I understand. So basically, if Mosley's my neighbor, and you go to me, and I said Mosley's there. Okay, Mosley's my neighbor, and you go to him, and he says I'm dead. God forbid.
Well, I mean, you know, the persons would not just say, ask if the person is dead and move on. You know, they're trained to ask other follow-up questions, which would make them form the conclusion that the information that the person providing to them is reasonably acceptable. But they're not going around just to hear dead and then move on. You know, to ramp up the numbers.
I wouldn't think.
Okay.
Outside of death certificates, sir, wouldn't hospitals have to report all deaths?
Hospitals would have to report, yes, because it is based on the hospital reports that the death certificates are issued. You see, remember you have to fill up a long form like that, you know, to get the death registered, and then to get your death certificate.
Mr. Roy, in the final analysis, is this situation to some extent going to be to the PP's advantage, and it will be able to remain in office a bit longer and ensure that some of its projects and programs are implemented before an election?
The PPP is not an electioneering party. I made that point before. We're not here only to fight elections.
No, I understand you. We're talking about ensuring that your projects and programs are executed. You have a little more time in your hand.
Well, I mean, every political, every
that's how we work to your advantage.
every ruling party, you know, such as the People's Progressive Party, would want to remain in office, you know, want the people, but that's the key, you know. It's not only a question to remain in office at any cost.
No, if
if
in the context of the no confidence motion and election pretty much around the corner.
Well, there's a lot of there's too much speculation, and you know, the argument is there's a lot of is I would think academic. There's a lot of theory in that, and it's speculative about what could happen from what wouldn't happen. Let us start off from where we are based on the realities. The reality is there's a list out there. The list is being checked by our party. We have found certain discrepancies. We have raised these discrepancies with GECOM, and I believe that we have done our part and we will continue to do our part. We all in this thing together. So all hands should be on this. The parties, GECOM, and the other stakeholders to ensure that the list is acceptable. It's a national enterprise. To ensure that the list is credible is a national enterprise. Everybody has a stake in ensuring that the list is acceptable, not only the PPP. What if somebody say they're not interested, and then on elections day they go to vote and they found their name and not on that list where they live but in another division? You know, that's a lot of frustration. That's a lot of frustration. I've seen it happen last time, you know, where people living in a particular community, they went to the school looking for their list on the name, their name on the list, and then they being told their name is somewhere else, some far away division. And people just get, I don't know whether that is done on purpose, but all these things we have to watch too, because people get frustrated and say, the hell with it, I'm not wanting to go and vote, they're pushing me around. You know, so we have to be vigilant on all those things. Yeah.
But last week you had talked a little bit about the National Democratic Front. Is this more of a civic upgrade as opposed to something that is a little bit broader range? Because I think that there's a little bit of confusion in the public that there's an assumption that you're going to be in dialogue with the APNU and the AFC, and this is going to be something more broad. But what you're essentially talking about is conversations with smaller stakeholders and upgrading the civic component of the party.
Well, I think the Starbuck News is trying to create some confusion on it. But we are certainly very clear on what we're talking about. If the Starbuck News seeks to editorialize our statements and create a mishmash about it and to say we got all kind of different things dangling out there, we don't know what we're talking about, and looks all confusing, you know, well, we have other means of getting our message out. You know, we have bottom house meetings, we have public meetings, we meet with people. That's how we get our message out. So if somebody really wants to know what we're talking about, we go direct to them and explain to them. On the other hand, we have Starbuck News, and from time to time, Kaicho News, confusing the issues, you know, to make the electorate confused. So, you know, we have our job to do. They have their job to do too.
But you haven't answered the question.
I just answered it. That's my answer to it. My answer may not be the answer that you may be looking for.
In this National Front Alliance that you're seeking, sir, would you, are you looking at the possibility of partnering with either of the two main opposition parties?
We are building, first and foremost, building block approach with grassroots organizations, talking to non-governmental organizations, other stakeholders and so on. We haven't reached to that stage as yet. And I'm not so sure if we will ever reach there. I'm not saying that we wouldn't. But, you know, it's a slow process because you have to talk to people, convince people, you know. You can't force people into alliances. You just have to hope that at some point in time they become a willing bride rather than an unwilling, you know, partner. And you know, it's a lot of patience and patience that is required in talking to people, because it's important decisions they have to make, you know, so it takes time.
So the party at this stage is not committing, but not committing to talking to the AFC and the APNU.
We haven't read their res yet. We haven't read their res
You
yet.
could.
We haven't read their res yet.
Mr. Rohi, quickly, reaching there as a destination, does it depend on whether your party loses more seats or regains the parliamentary majority?
I don't think it has anything to do with that. We base our position alliances on principles, not on expediency. Our policy on alliances is based on principles and is well laid down in all our documents. This is a principal party.
But do you believe that the PP can govern with less seats? Let's say you lose 4 or so. Do you think you can govern as you are now with 4 seats less?
I prefer to look at things as a politician on the optimistic side. What about if we win 4 more seats?
Fair enough. But if you're looking at statistics and we're looking at what happened in
Who's we? Who is this we?
The country.
The country? I don't know about the country.
But still, Mr. Roy, you haven't answered the question. Do you believe that you can govern the way you are governing if you lose 4 seats?
That is very remote possibility. I read Mr. Granger saying that victory is inevitable. That was one of our Congress slogans many years ago.
And you won.
We have always been winning since then. We've never lost a free and fair. And that is precisely why we want a free and fair elections. That is precisely why we want a free and fair elections. We don't want free and confused elections, as some people might want to harbor. We want free, fair, and transparent and orderly elections. People go to the polls, they must know that this is where they're entitled to vote. And everything must be orderly. Everything, no questions about it.
Some of the persons that you've been talking to for the National Democratic
I remember, I think it was elections night, when there was a huge crowd outside Parliament. And we went to meet with the other parties there. And Mr. Rupnarine turned up with a bundle of seals in his hands. And he told our presidential candidate, but Mr. Ramatar, look, I have over 30 seals in my hand. What will I tell those people out there? But where did he get those 30 seals from? Those were 30 seals that were discarded as a result of ballot boxes being opened and votes being counted. You know, and he brought these things as though to conjure up the image that boxes were secretly opened up by the PPP and votes were changed. And we don't do those things. Other people do it. All of that was part of the confusion plot. Who's that?
You talked about the National Democratic Front last week, and you had said that you didn't want to mention any names. Are you willing to mention some of the persons and the NGOs that you've talked to now?
When we come to that, we will so do.
Any
I
other?
have one more.
Our last question.
This is in relation to what Vanessa had been asking about Mr. Rafran's article. Would the PPP ever consider ceremonial president?
Have a ceremonial president means you have to change the constitution. To change the constitution, you have to have a 2/3 majority in Parliament. All the parties must agree.
But you can only speak.
But we will still constitute a 2/3 if we get in there. So I don't see in the near future any of the parties winning a 2/3 majority like what happened when Mr. Boredom had the referendum in 1978, I think it was. Yeah.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
So,